Hello, this is Domain 9, Columbus and the Pilgrims, Lesson 7, The Voyage of the Mayflower. And to start us off, as always, we have the vocabulary words. Our first word is cargo, and that's goods that are transported by land, sea, or air. For example, the furniture truck was loaded down with heavy cargo. Then we have destination, and that's the place someone plans to go. The dancers rode to the concert hall, their final destination. Then we have glory, praise or honor given to someone who is important or does something good. For example, the family gave glory to the fireman who saved their kitten. Then we have overboard. Over the side of a boat or ship into the water means overboard. For example, the fish I caught flopped overboard right after I got it off the hook. Passenger. A person traveling in or on a vehicle, vessel, or other means of transport is a passenger. There was only one passenger riding on the trolley. And now we can start our voyage of the Mayflower. On a warm September day in the year 1620, 102 men, women, and children gathered in a port town of Plymouth, England. They walked up the gangplank of a small sailing ship, bound for a new life in America. The Pilgrims are going from Europe to America. Most of the passengers were separatists, or passengers are people just traveling on the ship, not the crew sailing in it, okay? They were not only leaving their country behind, but they were leaving their identity as separatists behind as well. They were now pilgrims, making a pilgrimage in search of a religious freedom in the New World. The name of their ship was the Mayflower. It was not meant to be a passenger ship. Rather, it was supposed to carry cargo or goods to and from France for many years. The pilgrims were crowded into an area beneath the main deck, along with the ship's cannons. "We do not expect trouble," the ship's master told the pilgrims, "but we must be ready in case it comes." Pirates patrol these waters, looking for treasures and waiting to capture unprotected ships. The passengers took turns going up on the deck for fresh air and exercise. Despite the calm seas, a few of the passengers, unused to the constant motion of the ship, felt ill, or they were seasick. The air between the decks was often stale, adding to the discomfort. Gradually, they grew used to the cramped or crowded conditions on the board of the Mayflower. The Atlantic Ocean, however, was only waiting until they were far from shore to spring her traps on them. "Storm clouds, Captain," cried a sailor one day. "Aye, aye," replied the captain. "See to it that everything is tied down so it won't wash overboard. If we start taking on heavy seas, warn the passengers to do the same." Overboard means to go over the side of the ship. Soon enough, the storms and high winds of the North Atlantic struck with fury. Now even those who had been so far untroubled by the ship's motion felt sick too. The Mayflower tossed high, and huge waves was lifted and dropped down forcefully again and again. Rains poured down upon the ship and dripped between the decks. A few men offered to help the crew. One was tightening some ropes when a great wave hit the Mayflower from the side. Before he could grab his rope, the wave struck with all its might. With a cry, a man was thrown over the side. "Man overboard!" yelled the ship's navigator. 3 men rushed to the side of the ship, throwing ropes toward the struggling man. He managed to grasp one of them and held on desperately as he disappeared beneath the water. Sputtering and gasping for air, he bobbed up to the surface, still holding onto the rope in his hands. The sailors drew him closer to the ship. Reaching over the side, one of the sailors grasped the man's arm and pulled him safely back onto the ship. Fortunately, the storm soon blew itself out, but the passengers remembered their fear. After that, few of them dared to go on the deck, except in smooth seas. At last, on a clear, cold November day, the cry went up, "Land ahoy!" "Glory to God!" the pilgrims cried. Glory means praise to God. They had crossed the wide ocean and reached the eastern shores of North America at last. The pilgrims left Europe and arrived in America finally. The pilgrims had no idea what to expect of the new land ahead of them, but they had heard stories of native people living there, so while they called their destination, or the landing place, the New World, perhaps it was not such a new world after all. Who else do you know about who already lived there? Native Americans. Okay, so now we are going to move on to the questions portion of our read aloud. So the first one is, who were the people sailing to America? They were the Spartists from England. On what continent did they start their voyage or their trip? Europe. And to what continent were they traveling? So they were going from Europe to where? North America. Good. Number 2. Why were they called pilgrims? Pilgrims travel long distances, often for religious reasons, and that is what the separatists were doing. Number 3. What was the name of the ship that carried the pilgrims to America? The Mayflower. Number 4. Were the pilgrims comfortable as passengers on the Mayflower? No. Why not? Well, they were on a cargo ship, not a passenger ship. So it was cramped and they had to stay between the decks. The air was stale and many got seasick. Number 5. What dangers did they face on the ocean? Well, some of the things that we heard in the read aloud today were pirates, storms, big waves, and falling overboard, as we saw one man did. Number 6. Which danger on the sea would be the most frightening if you crossed the ocean on a ship like the Mayflower? So again, this is a question for yourself. So every answer could be right. For me, this is my answer. I get seasick often, and I would be most scared of getting really sick without having fresh air and maybe the ship sinking from the big waves flipping it over. Number 7. How do you think the pilgrims felt when they finally sighted land after 2 months at sea? Remember, this is another question that it's your opinion, so it's okay what you think. For me, I think they must have been so happy and glad to be getting off of that ship. This is the end of Read Aloud 7, The Voyage of the Mayflower, from Domain 9, Columbus and the Pilgrims. Thank you for listening.